A sprawling storm track is now cutting across the country, and over the next 48 hours, it is set to deliver severe weather, flash flooding, oppressive heat, and a rare tropical threat all at once. From the Great Plains to the East Coast, scattered storms will be capable of damaging winds, large hail, and isolated tornadoes. At the same time, saturated ground across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley keeps the flood danger high, while the South stays locked under intense heat and humidity. And outside the mainland, Tropical Storm LA could threaten Hawaii in a historic way today. If you have plans anywhere in this pattern, this forecast demands your attention because several hazards will overlap at the same time. The next 2 days are shaping up to be unusually active, and even where the tornado risk stays limited, damaging wind and flooding can still become dangerous very quickly. The setup is broad, messy, and capable of producing different impacts from one region to the next. So we need to move straight through the timeline and show you where the strongest storms, the heaviest rain, and the biggest problems are most likely to develop over the coming hours. We start with Saturday, and the Storm Prediction Center has 2 slight risks of severe weather on the map. One is centered across the high plains near Denver, Colorado. The other stretches from northeastern Indiana near Fort Wayne back into extreme northern South Carolina. In both areas, all hazards are possible today, but the main concern is straight-line damaging wind gusts between 60 and 75 miles per hour. That means storms do not need to produce tornadoes to cause trouble. If you are traveling, working outside, or spending time on road, you need to be ready before evening arrives. There's also a focused hail concern near and just east of Denver, where a few stronger storms could produce hail up to golf ball size. The tornado threat today is much more confined, but it is not zero. If you live between Fort Wayne, Cincinnati, and Columbus in that triangle, there could be 1 or 2 rotating supercells later this afternoon as a mesoscale convective vortex moves into the region. That little pocket of spin is one reason Western Ohio deserves attention. Even so, the tornado risk looks low, so this is a stay-aware situation, not an outbreak. The reason confidence stays tempered today is the amount of morning convection already in place. Storms are ongoing in Illinois and Indiana, and that activity should continue weakening through the late morning and early afternoon. If that early convection hangs around long enough, it can limit instability later in the day and keep the tornado risk down. If you live in Western Ohio, that is the balance to watch. The setup could support a slightly higher ceiling, but because the atmosphere may be worked over, the broader signal is still not one of major concern. Still, stay weather aware today. As we move into the afternoon and evening, the main tornado window today appears to run from about 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, with maybe something lingering just after 9 p.m. Near Springfield, Columbus, and surrounding communities, any storm that can tap into that leftover spin may rotate. The guidance around 9 p.m. Central or 10 p.m. Eastern shows multiple storms in the area. Significant tornado parameter values are not especially high right now, but that depends on how much convection is left over by lunchtime. If midday storms are limited, the tornado threat could rise later today. Most of the convection today looks messy, and while many storms may rotate for a time, organization should be difficult to maintain. That matters because messy storm modes often shift the problem away from classic long-lived tornado producers and toward damaging wind and heavy rain. If you are anywhere across Ohio tonight, you should be prepared for the possibility that storms eventually blend together and create a flash flooding issue during the overnight hours and into Sunday. So even if the tornado discussion gets much attention this afternoon, water could become the bigger hazard after dark for some areas. Farther west, severe weather is not expected to be a major issue today for most of Illinois, and the same goes for much of Iowa. Still, a few storms could fire near Des Moines and along the Interstate 80 corridor, and those cells could produce damaging wind gusts. The tornado risk there is very, very low and only comes into play if a storm somehow manages to organize. If you live near Chicago, do not be surprised if storms arrive sometime around or just after midnight tonight. Meanwhile, high plains storms may bring hail and winds this afternoon and evening. That takes us into Sunday, and this day has a different personality. The severe weather threat does not really get going until around 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., mainly near Lake Erie and back into West Virginia. There may already be 1 or 2 clusters of storms underway by then, and damaging wind gusts look like the main concern. If you live from the southern Great Lakes into the central Appalachians, your afternoon and evening forecast deserves attention, and if you want another update as this evolves, stay tuned, subscribe, and turn on notifications because a stream may happen tomorrow. One important question on Sunday is how much convection develops out ahead of the main storms. If enough showers and thunderstorms get going early, the atmosphere near Washington, D.C. could become somewhat stabilized before the stronger line arrives later in the afternoon. That would suppress the severe threat, at least a little, but if any storms stay more isolated, they will still have some wind shear to work with, because a low-pressure system will be passing to the north. That at least opens the door to a low-in chance of a strong tornado. Still, the main risk remains straight-line winds. If you live near Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, Richmond, or Washington, D.C., take every warning seriously through the evening storm threat there. Even with that low-end tornado concern, the larger expectation is that storms will upscale quickly. In other words, individual supercells may not stay organized for very long before the whole thing becomes more of a cluster or line. That usually shifts the danger toward broader wind damage, and it is one reason the tornado risk is low but not zero. Most of the severe weather across the Northeast should wind down by roughly 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. as daylight heating fades. If you have outdoor plans or travel that corridor, needs attention mainly late afternoon through evening today. By Monday, the focus shifts back to the Great Plains and nearby parts of the Midwest, and the signal is more isolated than what we see on Sunday. The formal outlook only carries a little risk of severe weather around Sioux Falls, where isolated damaging winds and large hail are the primary concerns. But that quieter label should not make you tune out, because the atmosphere nearby will be loaded with energy. If you live from eastern South Dakota into nearby areas, Monday is about watching what actually forms, not just the low-end category on the map for now. Model guidance on Monday is broad enough to show thunderstorms from International Falls back to North Platte, but the corridor that matters most is farther east near Sioux Falls. That is where instability is forecast to climb well above 4,000 joules per kilogram, which is a lot of fuel for severe storms. When you combine that kind of instability with the right storm mode, the atmosphere can become much more dangerous than a simple low-level outlook might suggest. So, near Watertown, Sioux Falls, and Sioux City, watch closely to see whether storms actually form during the late afternoon there. The tornado signal on Monday is also a little more notable. Significant tornado parameter values are forecast around 2 to 3 across a fairly large area, and that includes Watertown, Sioux Falls, and Sioux City. That does not guarantee tornadoes. It means the atmosphere could support them if storms become surface-based and discrete. And right now, that storm mode remains the key question. Timing is going to be crucial. If storms form correctly in that environment, there could be a legitimate tornado risk. So Monday is about ingredients as much as labels if you live in that area there. Then we move into Tuesday, and this is the day that may deserve the most attention in the central part of the country. The Storm Prediction Center already has a level 2 out of 5 slight risk posted from the Central Plains into the Midwest, including Sioux Falls, Omaha, Lincoln, Des Moines, and Cedar Rapids. Damaging winds look like the main concern, especially once storms begin to organize more broadly. Large hail is also possible from the initial supercells, and a couple of tornadoes cannot be ruled out. In fact, Tuesday could top today and tomorrow for tornado potential there. The early signal for Tuesday shows severe thunderstorms could extend across a very large region even before the main line matures. Guidance hints at storm potential from Escanaba in the upper peninsula of Michigan back to Sioux City, and that is just around 5 p.m. Central Time. After that, storms are expected to become more widespread. The corridor most likely to see the strongest weather appears to run around Omaha, Des Moines, and Davenport. If you live there, watch for storms to organize into a line, because damaging straight-line winds would become the main evening threat in your area. For Milwaukee and Chicago, the better news on Tuesday is that a major severe weather risk does not currently look likely during the main part of the day. That said, any leftover storms late Tuesday night into early Wednesday could still reach those areas with straight-line winds and maybe a very low tornado risk. Farther south and west, the bigger concern remains across Iowa, northern Missouri, and extreme western Illinois. By Wednesday, the system heads toward the northeast, but it should be weakening. So the East Coast severe weather threat looks limited compared with the Plains and Midwest earlier. Beyond Wednesday, confidence starts to drop. By Thursday and Friday, there is more uncertainty about exactly where the next severe weather corridor may set up. The GFS does hint that parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin could see more severe weather by Friday, but that is still in the longer range, so the details are not locked in. What is locked in right now is the larger national pattern. Soaked ground keeps the flash flood concern alive across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, while oppressive heat and humidity continue to bake the South. The weather remains impactful for many areas. Now we need to turn toward Hawaii, because a truly unusual situation is unfolding there. A hurricane is expected to form today, and it may threaten the Big Island directly. Tropical Storm LA continues to intensify, and if it makes landfall as a hurricane on the Big Island, it would be the first hurricane in modern-day records to do so. That is why this part of the forecast carries so much weight. If you live in Hawaii, especially on the Big Island, this is not just another tropical system brushing by offshore. This could be historic and dangerous there. The track still carries uncertainty. The National Hurricane Center cone keeps the center just barely offshore, but the possible path reaches as far north as just north of Hawaiian Ocean View. It could also stay well offshore. Even with that uncertainty, the circulation is still lined up to pass fairly close to the southern part of the Big Island. That alone is enough to create serious impacts. Some hurricane models are especially concerning because they show the possibility of a direct landfall on the eastern side of the Big Island. If that happens, the flooding threat near Hilo could become catastrophic. But even if the center does not come ashore exactly there, the rain threat remains major. This is one of those setups where the exact track changes which communities take the worst conditions, but it does not remove the danger. If you are on the eastern half of the Big Island, focus on flooding, mudslides, and strong winds through today and into early tomorrow local time. Regardless of whether the storm stays barely offshore or comes ashore, the rainfall forecast is alarming. Around 12 to 24 inches of rain could fall across a solid chunk of the eastern half of the Big Island. A lot of that rain may come down in a short period of time. And because of the terrain, the danger is not just from standing water. With the big mountain on the western side, the topography can focus rain on the eastern side and dramatically increase runoff. That is why mudslides become such a serious concern here. Respect this setup now there. The message for the Big Island is simple. Stay extremely vigilant today and into early tomorrow. This hurricane does not have to make a perfect landfall to cause major problems. A close pass alone would be enough to unleash dangerous rain and powerful wind. If local warnings change quickly, do not wait to react. Flooding in this kind of terrain can turn life-threatening fast, and mudslides can develop with very little notice. So on the Big Island, think now about roads, streams, and where you can safely shelter if conditions worsen later today or during the early morning hours. As we get into Sunday, the forecast becomes less certain in terms of where the center heads next, but the current expectation is that the storm probably moves back out to sea. Even then, Hawaii may not be finished with impacts. Outer bands could still affect areas like Maui, and that may bring at least a few inches of rain. In some localized spots, 6 to 12 inches are possible, depending on the exact track. Gusty winds may also continue, and there is even a very low tornado risk as the system passes. Elsewhere in Hawaii, stay alert too Sunday. The rainfall projections are where the concern really escalates. Hurricane guidance places a bullseye near Hilo, with some solutions showing 2 to 3 feet of rain, including areas just west of Hilo and east of the Big Mountain. Almost every hurricane model shows some version of that same idea, which is why the flash flood threat on the eastern side of the island stands out so strongly. This is topography working against you. If you live where water funnels downhill fast, or where roads can be cut off, you need to think about how conditions can deteriorate once rain arrives there. The concern is not limited to one island either. Guidance also shows a localized area near Hana, northwest of the Big Island, picking up around 1 to 2 feet of rainfall. That could also produce catastrophic flooding and mudslides. So when we talk about this storm, the rain footprint matters just as much as the center track. If you are in Hawaii, do not treat an offshore track as all clear. Outer bands and terrain can still create serious flooding away from the center. That is why this rainfall trend is so concerning tonight and into Sunday for many areas. Wind is the other major concern. If the system makes landfall later today, wind gusts are expected to peak around 90 miles per hour on the Big Island. Even if the center does not technically make landfall, inland areas could still see peak winds around 80 to 90 miles per hour. On the north side, near Hawaii, winds later this afternoon may reach around 70 to 80 miles per hour. Those are serious numbers. If you are exposed to trees or outage risk, prepare for damaging wind regardless of the exact landfall outcome on the Big Island today and tonight. Later in the evening, the storm should continue tracking west and likely weaken back down to a tropical storm as it moves west of the Big Island. Even then, wind gusts could still reach 50 to 60 miles per hour near Honolulu and back toward Hawaiian Ocean View. Very early Sunday morning, local time in Hawaii, the far western islands may also see peak gusts around 50 to 60 miles per hour. Then, late Sunday into early Monday, the system should be moving away, leaving much of Hawaii in cleanup mode with flooding and wind still demanding attention for residents. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the country is dealing with a remarkably active stretch of weather. Severe storms extend from the plains to the east, flood threats remain elevated across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, the south stays buried under heat and humidity, and Hawaii faces a rare tropical scenario that could challenge modern records. This is why the next 48 hours look so chaotic. Different places face different dangers, but almost nobody in this pattern gets a completely quiet forecast. Stay close to updates and take the forecast seriously where you live. Before we close this out, let me tighten up the regional timing one more time so you know where to focus first. For Saturday, watch Western Ohio late this afternoon into the evening, especially from about 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. For Sunday, the slight risk includes Louisville, Cincinnati, Columbus, Richmond, and Norfolk, with damaging wind gusts again as the main threat. A little large hail is possible, mainly back in the high plains. The tornado concern includes Dayton, Columbus, Pittsburgh, back into Richmond, and Washington, D.C. The atmosphere near Pennsylvania may briefly look a bit more favorable than places farther south, but the same messy storm mode issue remains. If you live from Pittsburgh through Harrisburg and Philadelphia down to Washington, D.C., watch the late afternoon and early evening closely before storms fade near 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. there. For Monday and Tuesday, the names to watch are Sioux Falls, Watertown, Sioux City, Omaha, Lincoln, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, and Davenport. Monday carries the lower category, but could still become notable if storms turn surface-based and discrete near that unstable corridor. Tuesday looks broader, wind-driven, and potentially more active overall, with severe storms possible across a large area and the mainline threat centered near Omaha, Des Moines, and Davenport. If you live across eastern South Dakota, Iowa, northern Missouri, or extreme western Illinois, pay closest attention from late Monday into Tuesday night in your area there. After that, Wednesday looks weaker along the East Coast, and by Thursday and Friday, the forecast becomes much less certain on exactly where the next corridor sets up. There is at least a hint that Minnesota and Wisconsin could see more severe weather by Friday, but this part of the outlook needs more time. So if you are planning ahead beyond midweek, make sure you check back for updates, because the long-range details can shift. Forecast confidence is highest on the weekend, moderate into Tuesday, and lower later on. That is why you should keep checking updates this week. One thing this pattern keeps reminding us is that severe weather is not only about tornadoes. Flooding can become every bit as dangerous, especially where the ground is already soaked across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. And heat can wear you down fast across the south when humidity stays oppressive. So even if your area never sees a classic supercell, you still may be dealing with weather that threatens travel, power, or safety. If you are in flood-prone areas, watch the creeks, roads, and low spots. In the south, take breaks, hydrate, and respect the humidity this weekend. As this unfolds, there's a real chance of another live stream tomorrow, especially if the Sunday threat starts to organize in a more concerning way. So if you want to know the second new warnings start going up, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. The next regular video is likely Monday, and that timing makes sense because Monday and Tuesday may become the next important stretch for the Plains and Midwest. In a pattern like this, the forecast can sharpen quickly from one update to the next. Stay connected for faster warning awareness this weekend. If you are in Western Ohio today, your biggest window is late afternoon through the evening. If you are near Denver or elsewhere in the High Plains, your focus is large hail and damaging wind from mid-afternoon into the evening. If you are around Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, Richmond, or Washington, D.C. on Sunday, pay close attention from late afternoon through early evening as storms approach, and then weaken by night. If you are near Sioux Falls, Watertown, Sioux City, Omaha, Des Moines, or Davenport early next week, be ready for a sharper severe weather conversation. Hawaii is immediate too. This is also one of those forecasts where small atmospheric details matter. Morning storms can knock down instability. A leftover spin center can locally raise a tornado concern. A storm line can turn a mixed setup into a wind event. An offshore tropical track can still produce catastrophic rain. That is why words like low, isolated, and slight never mean harmless. They mean the threat is selective, conditional, or confined, not absent. If you live in any of these regions, do not wait for a worst-case scenario to become obvious before you act. Treat warnings as actionable information always. A quick note again for Chicago and Milwaukee, because that is an important distinction in this forecast. Tuesday does not currently look like a major severe day there during the main part of the day, and that is good news. But late Tuesday night into early Wednesday is a different story if leftover storms hold together. Even then, the threat looks more like straight-line winds and a very low tornado risk, not a bigger outbreak signal. If you live in those cities, that means you should not ignore the forecast just because the peak setup is farther west. There, not every impact in this forecast will come with lightning on the radar. The South remains under oppressive heat and humidity, and that alone can turn ordinary plans into risky ones if you spend too much time outside. At the same time, soaked ground across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley means the flash flood threat can linger even after the first storms pass. Repeated rounds matter. Overnight storms matter. Water rising in the dark matters. So if your area is not in the tornado spotlight, do not assume the forecast is easy. Flooding and heat can still bite hard. The bottom line is that this is a high-tempo forecast with multiple rounds, multiple regions, and multiple kinds of danger. Saturday brings scattered severe weather from the high plains near Denver into parts of the east, with western Ohio carrying the more focused tornado discussion. Sunday shifts the attention toward the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast, with damaging winds still leading the threat. Monday and Tuesday refocus the concern on the plains and Midwest, where Tuesday especially could become notable. And over Hawaii, Tropical Storm Lay may do something historic if it reaches the Big Island. So wherever you are in this pattern, the message is not panic, it is preparation. Make sure you know when your storms are expected. Make sure your phone alerts are on. If you are in a flash flood zone, think about the roads you would avoid after dark. If you are in the high plains, be ready for hail and wind. If you are in the Ohio Valley or Mid-Atlantic, watch for quick changes in storm mode. If you are in Hawaii, do not wait for the weather to deteriorate before taking the rain and wind seriously for you. Thank you for spending this forecast with me, and if you are new here, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next update. There is a chance we go live tomorrow, and the next regular video will likely be Monday. With a pattern this active, those updates matter because the details can shift from one day to the next, especially with the Sunday severe weather setup, the Monday and Tuesday plains threat, and the evolving track of LA near Hawaii. Stay weather aware, stay connected, and make sure people around you know what is coming for them. This is one of those stretches where the atmosphere keeps finding new ways to stay busy. And that means your forecast can change fast, even when the big picture stays the same. The big picture is already clear. Severe storms from the plains to the east coast, flash flood trouble across soaked ground in the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, harsh heat in the south, and a rare hurricane threat near Hawaii. What changes are the local details. And those local details are what determine whether your evening is noisy, dangerous, or disruptive. Check in again before evening plans today. For now, that is the forecast. Keep an eye on Western Ohio today, the Ohio Valley, and Mid-Atlantic on Sunday, the Plains and Midwest Monday into Tuesday, and the Big Island right away as LA intensifies nearby. If you are new, subscribe before you go. If you have been here before, thank you for watching, and for staying weather aware with me through another active stretch. We will keep tracking every change, and if conditions demand it, we may see you in a live stream tomorrow. Until then, stay safe, and I will see you next update very soon.